Game over, man. Game over.
You're gonna need a bigger potion. So serious.
I am Iron Man.
This is a tasty burger.
Welcome to the In Session Film Podcast.
Welcome to this podcast review for October 29th, 2024, and I'm JD Duran.
And I'm Brennan Cassidy.
Happy Halloween, everybody. It is
Happy
tomorrow
Venom Day.
as this episode is released. So we hope everyone enjoys dressing up as Venom for Halloween and scaring all the children.
We are. Session film.
Yeah, exactly. We are
I couldn't think of
Venom.
anything more clever.
In session film? Yeah, no, that's a good one.
Yeah.
No, I do like that. Yeah, I'm very much in the Halloween spirit. I'm very ready. Cannot wait.
Yeah, I can
going
tell.
to see Venom: The Last Dance was a really fun part of the process. Not that it's a scary movie per se, but there's a lot of fun to be had with the Venom movies for me. So it kept me in the spirit. I'm ready for Halloween to get all excited.
They do kind of fit the Halloween vibe. Like there's a grossness to them that kind of fits the Halloween spirit for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I think with Tom Hardy, he is a walking Halloween costume. Like, you can dress up as any Tom Hardy character for Halloween, and a lot of people will be like, yeah, I get it. I understand why you chose that. So, there's a lot of Tom Hardy
Well, I mean, he and I
characters
share,
to choose from.
he and I share a birthday, so maybe I'll just go as Tom Hardy for Halloween.
You should just go as Tom Hardy, yeah. Which Tom Hardy do you want to be? Do you want to be model Tom Hardy? Do
I'll
you
be
want
Locke.
to be
I'll be Locke.
Just get behind the wheel of a car.
Yeah.
Like 3 people might get it, but it would be incredible for those 3
I'll just
people.
have to talk construction terms the whole time, like a
Yeah,
project
no.
manager or something.
Exactly. No, I do love that. Love me some Tom Hardy. I don't think we did a review for the first 2 films on the show. Did we do a review for the second movie? I'm trying to recall.
We did. I think we did.
Okay. I know we skipped the first one. We skipped the first Venom.
Yeah, we didn't bother with that, but I'm pretty sure we talked about Let There Be Carnage, at least given the fact that it was directed by Andy Serkis. I think it did spark some curiosity in us.
Okay, perhaps. Yeah, I might have to look that up. But I do, at the very least, recall that we skipped the first one. I caught up with it, I want to say during COVID? I don't even remember when the first one came out, but I want to say it was during COVID or maybe slightly after, depending when it came out. But it was much later.
Yeah, episode 450, Venom, Let There Be Carnage, and then we also did our top 3 campy superhero scenes.
There you go. Okay. So go check that out. But yeah, like I remember watching that first Venom, and like at the time I had no interest in seeing it. Like when it was in theaters, didn't really care to, talk about it here on the show.
Yeah.
And then, I catch up with it on a random Saturday night. And I do remember that my family was out of town. The kids were with their grandparents. So I had some time. I decided, you know what? I'm just going to have some fun and relax tonight. Watched Venom. And while it wasn't great, I had way more fun with it than I anticipated.
Good for you.
And I was like, I kind of dig this. Like I do kind of like it. So when the second film came out, I was kind of giddy for it. I was ready for more Venom, and I ended up liking that film much more than the first one.
It is so much better than the first one.
Yes.
It's way better.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's a lot of fun. So I was ready for The Last Dance. I was ready to get on those tapping shoes and dance my heart away with this film.
I'll have thoughts about the actual dance itself as we continue this conversation.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So let's go ahead and get into it. Are you ready to talk about Venom: The Last Dance? Till death do they part.
So that's actually a really cool title as well. I know that's the tagline, but yeah.
No, it's a very appropriate tagline, as it turns out.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Honestly, either one of them could have been the actual subtitle. I would have gone for it.
Yeah, I know. All right, so let's talk about Venom: The Last Dance. Till death do they part. Maybe that's just what we'll call it from now on. It is directed by Kelly Marcel, the Shell with Shoes On.
No, different.
Oh, that's a different Marcel. It is directed by Kelly
She
Marcel.
calls this movie Hardy Hairs.
Yeah, perhaps. Look, I imagine Kelly gets that all the time, so I apologize. I'm sure
she's
I
not gonna
am
listen to
the
this episode
millionth
now.
person to make that joke.
Yeah.
So, at any rate, yeah, Kelly Marcel directs this film. She also wrote the screenplay.
And I think
it
she
stars.
did she write all the other movies as well? I know she was at
I
least
don't
a
remember.
screenwriter on Let There Be Carnage, I think.
Okay.
So I think she has a history with these 3 films in some way, if I'm not
Okay.
mistaken.
All right. Yeah,
Yes,
honestly.
she is a writer on Let There Be Carnage.
Okay. There you go.
Okay, so she was at least a co-writer / primary writer on all 3 of them.
Oh, well, there you go. So they just gave her the chair for this third film. I love that.
Yeah.
Good for her. I love that. Good for her. It stars, of course, Tom Hardy. Chiwetel Ejiofor is in this as well. Juno Temple, Stephen Graham, a bunch of others that come and go throughout the film, including a cameo from one Andy Serkis. Shocking.
Yeah. I had no idea that was him until later.
I did know that. Oh, at least I knew that he was doing a character. I didn't put it together though until the end of the movie. Like I completely.
I mean, it becomes so obvious that they get an actor like Andy Serkis for just that one like brief 10-second sequence.
There's like 2 shots. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, we'll get to this maybe at the end of the conversation. I noted at the beginning of our Conclave review that was released yesterday, as this one is released anyway. Because I think you said something about how Venom isn't going to be talked about as much in comparison to Conclave. And right now, totally true. Going forward, there is reason to believe that Venom will be talked about more. Maybe we can get to that at the end.
Maybe not
Andy
for the best
Serkis
reasons.
is a big part of it.
Well, given also the recent news, if it's to be believed, what that Marvel update.
So let's save it. Yes.
Yeah, I'm not going to give away. I'm not going to give away what it is. Yeah, I'm just saying that there is a correlation to that for sure.
Yes. Yeah, there is a correlation. Yeah, we'll get to that at the end. All right. So Venom: The Last Dance, for those not familiar, and if you're not, you should be. Eddie and Venom on the run, face pursuit from both worlds. I love that this synopsis says both worlds, as we're supposed to know what both of them are. Like, okay.
Of course, yeah. Of course. It's obvious.
Face pursuit for both worlds. As circumstances tighten, they're compelled to make a heart-wrenching choice that could mark the end of their symbiotic partnership. All right, let's jump into this, Brendan. What did you think about Venom: The Last Dance?
I feel like I'm seeing. Well, you forgot "Till Death Do They Part," the new subtitle that we're gonna add.
How dare me?
I feel like the title actually should be "We Are Venom: The Last Dance Till Death Do They Part."
Exactly. What are you thinking, Sony? Come on, it was right there the whole time.
I was already interested in this movie, but that title would have made me even more interested in this movie. I thought the marketing for this one was actually really good. And you know me, Judy, I am not one to get excited over movie trailers, but I thought the marketing for Venom: The Last Dance was pretty effective, primarily because it looked like it was capitalizing on what made Venom: Let There Be Carnage more successful than that first film, is that it basically deviated away from the typical superhero movie trappings that we tend to criticize and just focus on a bromance between a man and a symbiote is basically what that movie mostly is. And of course you have Woody Harrelson there to sort of counterbalance all of that in his own Woody Harrelson-like ways. And with regard to Venom: The Last Dance, I feel like I've heard 2 different factions of responses for this movie. I feel like some are saying, again, this is maybe just a small limited bubble from what I'm seeing. It's probably not emblematic of the full population who went to go and see this movie. But from what I'm seeing, it looks like there are those who think it's the best Venom movie of the 3, and then those who think it's the worst of the 3. And that leads to the burning question, do I think it's the best or the worst of the 3? And my answer is, yep.
Yeah.
Yep. It's proof that both things can absolutely be true. Because I do think this is both the best and the worst of the three films for very different reasons. I think where it is at its best, it's mostly in what the marketing was tapping into. It is that continuation of the bromance side of things that was so evident in Let There Be Carnage. There is still a lot of that here, and thankfully, it is still most of the movie. I still really do like the Eddie Brock and Venom dynamic. And most of this kind of just feels like a meandering road movie in some ways.
Mhm.
Even despite the grand scale of it all, the stakes are probably bigger than they've ever been in these three movies. The
Mhm.
movie does feel relatively smaller by comparison, which is a weird thing to say. It takes place over the course of what only feels like a day, and it kind of makes the scope feel more limited, despite the grandness of those stakes. So I kind
Yeah.
of like the approach in that regard. Um, you also get a lot of other stuff that feels very comic book movie like with regard to, okay, how the military is going to get into it, how the special forces team is going to get into this, how Juno Temple and Chiwetel Ejiofor and their respective characters now play a role in this. And those are the things that I think are the worst of all three of these movies. I think it is genuinely terrible, those pockets there, and how that interplay is actually done. But it's not most of the movie, thankfully. But that's why I say that the movie is both my favorite and least favorite of these three, because it's doing the things that I love the most of these three movies, and it's also doing the things I like the least, and in the worst
Mhm.
ways. It's like it's doing all of that. So it's a very messy movie. It's not a good movie by any means. But where it's fun, I was able to latch on to it. Maybe just selfishly, I wish it was a little bit more in line with what Let There Be Carnage was doing, and actually making
Mhm.
it even more of a priority than maybe, let's say, than it could have been. So yeah, I still had mostly fun with it.
I think Venom: The Last Dance Till Death Do They Part is the cinematic achievement of the year. I
Sure,
laughed,
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
cried,
yeah. No, no,
I
it's fine.
had a blast. I felt every human emotion possible. It was the best time I've had at the movies. I loved it. I had the greatest time.
Oh my gosh,
Yes, this is by
greatest
far
greatest time you had at the movies this year?
the
Really,
greatest time I've had at the movies. I
man.
enjoyed myself immensely. I absolutely adored.
I guess, as I said, so many things can be true all at once. So I guess that is a fact.
Like, I felt every emotion. I think this is easily the best of them. And here's
Okay,
why.
okay.
Is it structurally flawed like the other two are? Absolutely.
Oh
It
gosh, yeah.
has its faults. They all do. All these
It's it
Venom
it
films
it it
are not.
it is not a good movie, like I said. Like, this is barely held together by Scotch tape.
Yeah, look, but I don't think the other two movies are writing masterpieces
Of
either.
course they're
I
not.
think they're
Yeah.
both
The whole trilogy is
foundationally.
held together by Scotch tape.
Yeah, the whole trilogy is held together by Scotch tape. Absolutely. But what I love about this film is that when when it emphasizes what it wants to be, it knows what it is and really leans into it. And what this film is not a comic book movie. This is a film about a man having an existential crisis. This is a movie about Eddie knowing that at the end of this, he's probably going to die. And knowing that he
Mhm.
is probably going to die, he is coming to terms with who he is and his relationship with Venom. And I absolutely adored that throughout this film. This is a bromance film through and through. It is all about the relationship between Eddie and Venom, and how, not just how they've come to terms with each other, but how they've grown to genuinely love each other deeply. It's more than just a symbiotic partnership, it is
Mhm.
truly a love relationship. And I love how this film treats that with, yes, a lot of fun, but also enough sincerity that there's genuine moving parts to this film. Like, as Eddie is interacting with that kid there in the van, or even the father figure there at times, Yes, there's fun to be had there, but there's
Martin,
also
yeah.
genuine moments of that existential crisis of like when Venom tells him, "You would be a great dad." Moment of the trilogy. Moment of the trilogy. It is so
Maybe.
good.
Maybe.
Absolutely loved it. Like every interaction with that family, I just absolutely adore. But every interaction between Eddie and Venom was just the absolute best. It's a ton of fun, and that bromance is really, really felt to the point where you get this montage at the end that is extremely tacky, extremely cheesy, and again, the best time at the movies. Absolutely the best. Take
Okay,
that,
let's get away.
Furiosa.
Let's
Take
get away
that,
from
Dune
the
Part 2.
hyperbole.
It is Venom: The Last Dance. Hell yeah. I enjoyed
Let's get
every
away
moment
from
of that cheesy montage. Absolutely adored it. And you're right, Brennan. There are moments here where the film realizes, oh, right, we're a Venom movie. We can't just be
Yeah, it's a
a
superhero movie.
bromance the whole time. We have
need a
to
plot.
include.
We need a plot.
Yeah, we need something to chase these guys.
Oh man, yeah.
So yeah, there's some sort of weird alien creature that's not really explained at all. Then you have Juno Temple's Dr. Teddy Payne in the film, and Chiwetel Ejiofor's Rex Strickland, both characters shoehorned in here for plot's sake. And when the film is, about those characters, aside from, I think, the moments with Dr. Payne and the other Venom symbiotes, I think there's some fun to be had there.
Yeah,
but
Stephen Graham is at least trying to make some of those things work coming back.
Yeah. And like the Venom part of it, I do think is really interesting, and maybe we can get into that as we go. But generally, I agree with you when the film turns away from the Venom of it all and becomes about, oh yeah, we have to have this plot. It throws all that in. There's no thought at all poured into it. Like it just doesn't care. Like it just realizes that we have to go to these things to drive Eddie from A to Z. So they just throw it in here. But honestly, there's not that much of it. Like this film primarily is that existential crisis. I somewhat joked about this on the main show. Until you get to the ending, there are two bursts of violence or action in this film.
Yeah.
There's the dog sequence at the beginning, and then there's the airplane which is quick. The airplane sequence is actually really brief, and then there's the chasing of them through the valley there and into the river. That's it until you get to the end of the film. There are two bursts of action until you get to the end of this film. It is primarily for a comic book movie. This is very slow and methodical and takes its time. It is all about that existential crisis, and I was kind of taken aback by that. So everything else away from that, not great. Totally agree. The film clearly doesn't care, but when it comes back to it, it very much cares, and I think does it extremely well. And like I said, cinematic achievement of the year.
It's 65% a bromance movie to me. I think mathematically, maybe it was just my experience and how disassociated those other sequences, those plot mechanics felt from the things I liked the most, but it felt like way more than perhaps we're even letting on.
And I don't know the math either, but it feels more like 80-20 to me. But that could just be how I feel about the Eddie Venom stuff. I think is so good that it just gives off that feeling that there's way more of that than the latter.
You know what I think it was for me? I think it's less so the mathematics of what that percentage split actually is, because we get so much of Eddie and Venom for a good chunk of the beginning of the movie until the plot finally starts to kick in, maybe around the 15/20 minute mark. And then that's when we're introduced to Juno Temple and Chiwetel Ejiofor and Stephen Graham making his appearance back into this movie after the second one. There's a sequence that introduces the plot in what feels like, to me, it felt like it went on for 45 minutes, even though it was probably only about 10. But I actually, I do appreciate that perhaps the movie is trying to get the plot mechanics all out of the way so it can then start.
It just gets it out of the way
other
early.
things.
Yeah.
But man, that sequence goes on for so long. So then every time it cuts back to them for plot purposes until these completely different avenues start to intersect with one another, it feels like there's way more of it than I personally would have liked, because I do love all of the things with Eddie and Venom just walking down the desert talking about nothing. That's the stuff I like. I like the family dynamics between all of these actors here, and I want to get their names right because I'm forgetting some of them. But you have Reese Ifans, I believe his name is, who I actually thought maybe he was going to secretly come back as the Lizard, because technically he did play the Lizard in the Sonyverse at one point. So Dr. Connors, but he and his family, played by Alana Ubach and the two kids here, Dash McLeod and Hayla Finley. Again, I don't know if I'm pronouncing all their names right, but I like that dynamic. I like the bus ride sequence. I think it's great. I think it's absolutely hilarious how the film feels the need to shoehorn them back into the final act of the movie.
I loved it. I know it's ridiculous.
It is. I'm not even kidding, and I hate to use this word. It is the stupidest thing I've seen in a movie all year.
And I'm
not even kidding. But it's that moment where I really started to sense a self-awareness and a lack of care for the plot mechanics.
Yeah.
Because it is dumb with a capital D-U-M-B is what that is.
No, I completely agree. Like, when the film wants to care, I think it absolutely does. And where it cares is with Eddie and Venom, and in particular how he intersects with the Moon family. And I agree with you. Like, I love those moments, as ridiculous as they are, and they are utterly ridiculous. But I loved it, and there is a tinge of pathos to it that I was caught off guard by, and I like that intersection of goofy fun with that existentialism. Like, it's such a weird mix, but somehow in
Venom,
this film,
The Last
I think,
Dance, till death do they part,
till
existential
death do they
dread.
part. And that bromance is really strong, that I think, sure, yeah, there's a lot of fun to be had, as shoehorned as it is, and it is. I do agree. And I also really like the Venom stuff here, in this, like the broader Venom stuff, because there's all these other symbiotes that show up. And I kind of love that the film is like, when the rocks landed, there was more than just Venom. There was a bunch of them, really, and they were just kind of scattering all over. And we caught them.
I will say, selfishly, when we hear the plot tell us that there's more of these symbiotes, of course, it's no surprise that many of them are going to play a part in the final act, right?
Sure, yeah.
I will say, and maybe this is me being too critical for a movie that doesn't deserve this level of criticism.
This film is not that serious.
No, I know. And this is not a serious criticism. In fact, I think it was a way for the film to maybe even capitalize on that sense of fun even more. I do wish it built up that symbiotic reveal better. Because I think,
fair.
I think the way that some of these human characters become intertwined with these symbiotes that they have, I did feel like those reveals of sorts were a bit anticlimactic. And I honestly, I feel like the same could be said about the titular Last Dance here with Mrs. Chen. It is so weirdly edited that I don't think it leaves room for the for the playful energy to really come through, because it's still intertwined with the plot kind of maneuvering into it. It almost feels like it was edited down from something that was meant to be a lot longer. And I would love to see a full musical number of that sequence, and we didn't really quite get it here. So there were moments where I think the film, from an editing standpoint, sort of limits the lunacy of what I like about these movies. And I kind of wish that maybe it was less anticlimactic, because there are things that happen in that final act, especially, that I was ready to have fun with. And for the most part, I still did have fun with it, because the Eddie Venom dynamic of it all was still front and center. It does play with some of those reveals in a way that I don't think always works. I think it would have really, pushed it a little bit harder, honestly.
Okay, yeah, I do want to speak to the Mrs. Chen moment here in a moment,
Okay.
but to circle back, I do want to finish my thoughts on the Venom of it all, and the symbiotes, and maybe our biggest perspective or disparity here, rather, comes down to what we want out of this. I don't really know.
Oh, sure, yeah.
I wasn't here for any sort of explanation. The first two films made that
I'm not
very
either.
clear
Yeah.
that they don't care to explain anything.
I don't want the explanation either.
So the symbiotes, them just showing up here randomly midway through the film, to me, rendered a laugh. I thought it was just absurd and silly that, oh yeah, there's more symbiotes here. We knew that there were more based off of Let There Be Carnage, but I love that this film just introduces even more of them in the ways that it does.
Go ahead.
And then as we get to the ending of the film, I wasn't expecting or needing the film to do anything more than what they did. You're right. We knew that they were going to come into play. And I guess through the Stephen Graham character, the Patrick Mulligan character, that does set up what the stakes of the film are and why these symbiotes are desperate. So I do think the film at least does some work to make sense of it, at least a little bit, as much as this film cares to do, I guess.
Well, yeah.
So when they do come back into the fold, as far as the stakes are concerned, and I think that's really all that matters, when they start to become involved, there's some interesting banter between the symbiotes and the military that is counterintuitive and weirdly a little subversive to the whole Venom ethos, the stereotypes of the symbiotes anyway. I find that fascinating. So the film obviously doesn't do a whole lot to really get into that deconstruction, but just offering that as a thing here was more than enough for me. Like I found that to be a fun element, even if there's no nuance to it. The deconstructionist, subversive, just throwing that at the wall, I thought was fun. In addition to, again, what the film was really emphasizing, the Eddie Venom stuff, which I think totally rocks here.
Well, then maybe I need to explain the quote unquote anticlimactic criticism that I talked about earlier, because I'm with you. I don't want these things explained to me. I don't care about the machinations of what's actually going on. I think like that's what I don't want. What I wanted to see more of was, oh, one of these main doctor characters that we've been following, oh, now she's going to be infected by a symbiote and she's going to build all this strength up. It's like, okay, build the music up. Take advantage of filmmaking tactics to build up that grand reveal. The movie doesn't do that.
That's totally fair. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
You're
what
right. It just happens. It's just something that happens.
That's what I'm talking about, is that these things just happen. But I would have rathered see the film, from a filmmaking standpoint, utilize other means aesthetically to have even more fun with that. And that's where I think the film drops the ball.
No, I think that's perfectly fair. I don't mind that criticism. It doesn't bother me like it does you. I don't, again, because we're talking about symbiotes that are revealed halfway through the movie. Like, it reminded me of, I think it was the second Transformers film, the one that they made during the writer's strike. There is a Transformers character in that film. The character's name is Jolt. He literally shows up halfway through the film with zero explanation. And the real explanation is they just needed money for the movie. So Chevrolet's like, here's a car. And so Michael Bay's like, yes, thank you. They were halfway through production already. So that car just shows up halfway, no explanation as to who the character is, and becomes like a pivotal part at the end when they have to fuse Optimus with I forget the plane, the old plane character that just kind of crumbles and dies at the end.
Forgotten about that now.
Yeah. So like they like fusing the two bodies together. So like Joel is like a big part of that whole moment, but like no explanation. Just character comes and goes. It's just silly, ridiculous. And that's kind of what happens here, where like all these symbiotes show up for no reason, and Chevy isn't even a part of it. They didn't even get paid for this. Seriously. Like these characters just show up and I don't know what to expect from them other than they're just going to be used as a device in the third act for action purposes, similar to Jolt. So I guess that's really all that I was expecting or needed out of them. But I don't, like, I'm not going to push back against what you're saying, because you are absolutely right. It just doesn't bother me, I guess, because where the film thrives in terms of Eddie and and Brock and this family. That to me, I think is, especially because these scientist characters, we don't really get to know them anyway.
I think
Like they're mysterious figures.
It has nothing to do with the science characters. I think it's more to do with the just and this is actually a genuine praise I want to give all three of these movies, and it's also evident here. The visualization of how the symbiotes are characterized here. I actually do think it's pretty inventive. I do think there are inventive qualities here, and I think that's why I was criticizing a little bit further to really capitalize on how inventive they are physically, and they do that a little bit. But I think to make maybe more of a superhero comparison here, if you remember when we saw that first Shazam from what was that 2019, and there was that grand reveal at the end when all of a sudden all the kids became adults. But it was like this buildup. Now again, it's a very different type of buildup because there's actual emotional weight to it. That makes it maybe not a fair comparison, but aesthetically speaking, there was a physical and tonal buildup to that I would have liked to also see here, just given the physicality of those Venom or of those symbiotes here.
Again, totally fair. Like I don't have a strong feeling about that, but I think what you're saying is totally reasonable. I like maybe where I would have liked to see that maybe a little bit is with Sadie, because she is a prominent scientist here.
Agreed.
And there are these interesting shots in the film that are somewhat surprising for a film like this because they are built through ambiguity and Clark Backo's performance, where you get these shots of her wrestling with these stakes, and you can tell that the character is truly wrestling with something, but it's never spoken. It's never out in the open. And I do appreciate that a film like this is willing to go there. By the way, I also love that her name is Sadie Christmas. Great character name.
Yeah, that is a great character name. I might steal that one.
Name.
Clark Backo, who plays her, is actually giving a performance that maybe this movie doesn't even deserve.
She's really great. Really good.
I mean, I guess the same could be said about Tom Hardy, who's actually legitimately acting in a movie.
Oh, yeah, he's fantastic. I love Tom Hardy. But
she's also doing the same thing.
Yeah, I do like what Clark Backo is doing here because, again, she's asked to do things without any dialogue. And look, these movies aren't typically built on that. Her character is in some ways built on that here, which I do appreciate. And I think she does a great job of tapping into that. And there are a couple of reveals here or moments where the symbiotes interact with her. And could the film have, at least with her character, did more to emphasize what you're talking about? Probably. I don't disagree with that because she is so prominent here. But again, I don't mind it because where it gets it right is with Eddie and Venom and their dynamic and how they interact with the Moon family. That's what I loved.
I still can't get over how they become involved in that final act. It's the most hilariously stupid thing of the year.
It's so dumb. It's impeccable. I love it so much. Like, it's so absurd. But like that moment with Eddie and Venom there with the kid there on the tower. Oh, so endearing. I love that.
I mean, yeah, that's the only reason why they're written back into the movie is to have that endearing moment, because they obviously didn't know how to make it mechanically work. So it's like, okay, let's just have him sneak into Area 51 because there was a hole in the fence.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, it's so ridiculous. No, I love that. I love the singing in the van earlier in the film, or even when Eddie first shows up.
David Bowie.
It's yeah, that whole moment, Venom singing. Oh, it's great. And Venom, like he's a musical guy, right? Like we hear him sing that song, and then there's the Mrs. Chen moment that you brought up earlier, and he needs to let his dance out. Yeah, and I love that whole sequence as well. Again, cinematic moment of the year. I don't know if that'll make my top 5 scenes of the year, but it might. It's really, really fantastic.
I do wish the editing was better involving that dance with Mrs. Chen, like I was talking about earlier, because it does get intercut with this other alien creature that's on the hunt.
Yeah, at the end of it. Yeah.
Yeah,
even throughout, like, yeah, because they're
Yeah.
building up the stakes of the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, I would have liked to just see a legit musical number between Venom and Mrs. Chen for at least what felt like a good 2 minutes. Like I
Yeah.
wish it would have
That's
committed
fair.
to it a little
No,
bit.
that I totally see that. But I still had a lot of fun with the moment. I guess in some ways I kind of don't mind the editing there, although I do agree with you. Let me be clear, I do agree with you. But there is something about, as simple as it is, and it is very, very simple-minded, the stakes of this film. It's weird how the film presents something that is so unsophisticated, yet the stakes are as high as they possibly could be. I don't know how the film managed to achieve that, which kind of breaks my brain in some ways, because we think about like what DC and Marvel have done over the years, and the stakes are usually built with some sort of like there's Zod and there's Thanos, and now there's this multiverse component. Like, we're trying to reach for like these crazy things, where here I just love that it's just it's almost like Alien in a way. It's just like this impenetrable alien creature that they can't defeat. That's all that it is. And when you present multiple of them,
Yeah.
the symbiotes can't defeat them. Like, it's just, it's so simple, but it's effective. So the idea that Venom can't come out, otherwise this creature might will be able to track it.
It is the most hilarious use of convenient exposition dumping.
Oh my gosh, it's incredible! Like, yeah, no, but for Venom, I think what is great about the dance moment is that it kind of gives it weight, right? Because he knows that by fully transforming, the creature's going to come after him.
Yeah,
but he does it anyway because that's how much he cares about this dance. So, like. Yeah. It does kind of give it weight. And so, like, while I totally agree with you, I would love to see, well, even for a movie like this, you know, like, more comparatively to everything else, you know, because there's actual stakes there. Like, he knows that by transforming the creature, we'll be able to find him.
Best adapted screenplay nomination for Kelly Marcel.
Look, I'm just saying, I think that is well established. I think the film kind of earns that a little bit. So, you know,
it does at least earn quite a few laughs. Like, while I don't think this is the best of the three, just given the totality of it all, the second one is still my favorite of the three, because I think that's the one that most consistently commits to the thing that I like about these movies the most. But I think perhaps the two most gut-bustingly hilarious moments from this whole trilogy do come from The Last Dance. The first one being the opening scene of the movie, which is basically a regurgitation, or at least a continuation of, what was it, the post-credit scene?
The post-credit scene from the last one, yeah.
Yeah. The sucking back and forth, Venom just yells, "I am so done with the multiverse."
Yeah.
He is clearly speaking for the Marvel fandom right now.
Yeah.
So I like the meta quality there. And perhaps the moment that got me the most was when Eddie first meets the Moon family, and they give him this dish to eat in good faith. And Martin explains that there's no meat in there. So Venom just goes, "Hard pass," and just throws it away. One of the funniest things of the year.
I love that moment as well. Yeah, I mean, the whole bromance is great. I mean, I really liked Let There Be Carnage as well. Like, for me, I think this, and maybe appropriate to what you were just saying in terms of how this film really just picks off where Let There Be Carnage ends. So it's a little bit of the Dune Part 1, Part 2 thing, where these two films just seem like a seamless continuation of each other. Like, maybe that's how I ultimately feel about these two movies, is that they just, because I think this film similarly is so self-aware of the bromance comedy and leans
The Last
heavily
Dance
into
will be
its absurdity.
carnage. Just fuse them all away.
Just fuses it all together. Like, because I think this film is equally self-aware. It's equally about that self-bromance. But now, in addition to the bromance, we're throwing in existential crisis. And that element does add something new and and something invigorating for me that I loved here. Genuinely. And Tom Hardy is so fantastic and tapping into that in his performance in a way that is often funny and weird and engrossing, but again, it comes with a tinge of pathos to it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The fact
just
that his
absolutely love it.
performance in this movie is better than something like The Dark Knight Rises is just hilarious to me.
No, yeah, I mean, he has more to do here, but yeah, I mean, he really, like, they figured out a way to channel Eddie and Venom and that whole dynamic. And I love that they lean into the bromance. I love that they lean into that relationship and what they really do mean for each other. Like Eddie is genuinely heartbroken that either they're going to, succumb to this creature together, or as they're separated, spoiler alert, as they're kind of separated at the end, there's like a funeral that takes place basically. So,
Kind of.
there's like a whole, like, again, I love the montage, completely ate it up. A+, no notes. Loved it. Absolutely loved it.
Now I'm not going to be surprised if this ends up as your favorite movie of the year.
Might. Who knows? I don't know. We'll see. It
Yeah.
might have the scene of the year. It might have the performance of the year. Yeah, who knows? I mean, it's this film and Red Rooms and, I don't know, The Brutalist. Those will probably be your top 3 movies of the year. So
I almost hope you commit to that, because we need more critics that just have the most bonkers best of lists. Like, we really do.
Yeah. I don't know. We'll see. I mean, look, obviously I've been having a lot of fun with this review. But in a real moment of honesty, though, I did really enjoy the film. I had a lot of fun with it.
Yeah.
That part I was not being facetious.
I know that.
about.
Yeah. Hey, much like a movie like Conclave, you're just simply heightening what's true, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
I wouldn't call what you were doing melodramatic. I would just call it heightening
just
the realism.
heightening the realism a little bit. Yeah, absolutely. Like, I genuinely had a great time, had a ton of fun, loved the existentialism of Eddie and the bromance of it all, and it ends in tragedy, sort of. But maybe this is where we can transition to the news that apparently the Sinister Six is coming back. I guess Sony said, screw it, we're bringing it back. We're getting the band back together, baby. And guess who's on that list? Venom. So I guess he's coming back.
I don't believe this. I don't know if I believe this news. I don't think it's coming from a valid source. Like, I'm still questioning it.
I don't know. Well, look, here's where I think there is validity to it. Because we noted earlier that Andy Serkis plays the character of Noel here. Noel, who is not explained at all. Like, just
He's just
shows
thrown
up
in here.
No exposition.
And he is a Thanos level threat in a way.
Yes, absolutely. Which kind of makes sense of why the stakes are so high in this film. But he's barely in the film. Like, he has like 2 shots in this film. So I can't imagine that they would, because if you don't have any future plans for this, just make the whole thing CGI. I mean, it's basically video game like in its rendition anyway. So why put Andy Serkis in this role? Like, if you're gonna put Andy Serkis as that character, you have more plans for the character going forward. Sure. And so the idea that he's gonna come back as a Thanos level villain for the Sinister Six to take down, that makes sense to me. Otherwise, why put Andy Serkis in this role? Like, I think there are future plans. So I agree with you. The source is dubious. Yeah. But
the breadcrumbs are there to allude to that being the case. It's just I guess I don't know if we know for sure if that's going to be case. I there's even a lot of speculation that what happens here, especially with Null, is maybe going to somehow bleed into the MCU in a way. So I don't know. At this point now, I'm done speculating. Whatever they do is what they do.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to Sony, I think it's best to maybe not speculate, because I don't think they have any idea what they're doing. Like,
No.
I think they somewhat lucked into Venom's success. Venom has been a lot of fun. Tom Hardy has been great. But Morbius, huge disaster. Madam Web, huge disaster. You know, I know they have their hands in the cookie jar with Spider-Man, but that's been a collaboration with the MCU. So I don't think that fully counts.
Yeah.
The Sony individual stuff has been less than ideal, we'll say, and not always successful. So, like, the reason to pull the trigger on this, unless you can get Spider-Man involved, and maybe that's the only reason they really do greenlight this, is if Spider-Man is involved. And we don't know how Craven is going to fare as well. To be fair to Sony, that could be
for
a
all we know.
hit as
For all
well.
we know, that movie could be amazing.
Yeah, it could be really great. But, you know, it's obviously been very hit or miss. You know, we'll see.
Mostly miss.
Mostly miss.
If you want to,
miss.
if you want to take those misses and mathematically give them even more weight, then perhaps it is even more of a miss, given how much of a miss Morbius and Madam Web both were, because those are next level disasters of films.
Oh, for sure. And if you really want to consider quality, like, I loved the Venom movies, but I'm not going to come out here and champion them as like truly great pieces of art, like cinematic masterpieces. I don't think it's that at all. So, like, you know, I do think it's a far cry from the best the genre has to offer.
Yeah, if they were MCU films, they wouldn't be among the very best.
No, they wouldn't.
Yeah.
So, like, I don't know. And it might depend on tone and how they want to approach this. But, like, the way Noel is presented in this film, it is like a Thanos level serious threat. But what makes the Venom movies so much fun is that they don't take themselves seriously at all.
Yeah.
So, you know, how are you going to make all that work? Because, like, you know, is Craven going to be like self-serious? I don't know. Like,
yeah.
I don't know. It's all weird.
I would have loved to see an actual Venom movie, and this is not to like say that I was so disappointed in what these movies ended up being, but I would have loved to see a movie where, let's say, Venom and Tom Hardy steal a motorcycle, meet a bunch of other bikers, go on a giant road trip together, and they just remake Easy Rider. Like, that's what I would love to see. I would love to see a movie like that.
Yeah. I mean,
but we kind of get some of that here.
We do. Like, I think a lot of this film is really that kind of buddy movie bromance thing, you know, with the crisis involved.
Sure.
Like, I think that is a lot of this film, and I had a ton of fun with that. And the film genuinely cares about that stuff here. So, I mean, that to me is where it thrives. Yeah, I had a great time.
Best movie of the year.
Achievement
Best movie of the year.
2024. Yep.
Yeah, I'm still probably gonna sit around the 2.5 out of 5 for me. But the stuff that I loved, I wanted it to be even more of a prominent presence here. Like, that's why my favorite is still Let There Be Carnage, because I think it is the one that capitalized on that stuff the most.
Okay, I think both of them capitalize on it the same. Like, honestly, because, like, I think the problems here are equally present in Let There Be Carnage. In fact, I think where that film might, like, in hindsight, be more disappointing to me is I don't like this film really leans into its absurdity in a way I really liked. Where Let There Be Carnage, while the bromance element of it, I think is really great. I think at times maybe that film comparatively is maybe a little too self-serious than what we get here with The Last Dance. So I don't know. In some ways, I think that might ultimately be the distinction between the two for me, and why ultimately I prefer The Last Dance. Like, there's not a serious bone in this film's body at all.
It's not serious, but it also does get bogged down by plot mechanics that's more reminiscent of the first Venom movie, which is why I don't care for that first Venom movie.
I think is in Let There Be Carnage too. Like, there's plot mechanics there that I don't think work all that well.
I didn't feel it as much though, and maybe that's the thing. There might be more of it in Let There Be Carnage, but I didn't feel it as much. There's such an emphasis on it,
and that's interesting because that's pretty much how I feel about about The Last Dance. Like, I don't.
Yeah,
like, I couldn't tell you anything about the science characters or True Hotel Edgy 4. You know, again, I don't know what the math is, but it felt 80-20 to me. Like that feeling that you're talking about, that is exactly how I feel about The Last Dance.
Yeah, that's interesting. Very interesting.
But I do think ultimately the two films are very complementary to each other as far as Eddie Venom goes. Anyway.
Although they're certainly better than that first Venom movie, which I did not care
That's
for.
for sure. Yeah, I'm going to end up grading them about the same.
Okay.
I'm half tempted to give it a 4 stars just
Don't
for the
do
fun
that.
factor.
Oh, come on.
Just for the fun factor. It's at least going to be 3.5. It's at least going to be 3.5.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not quite there, but I mean, I don't necessarily disagree with the things that you liked about it the most. Those things do work.
All right. Well, with all of that said, let us know if you agree or disagree. You might disagree with me. That's fine. I understand that most people aren't calling this the cinematic achievement of the year. That's fine. You're all wrong.
Not many are. Not many are.
You're
Not
all
many
wrong.
I don't think anyone will.
It's
Unless you're JD Duran.
Yeah, Oscar nominations for Best Picture will be The Brutalist, Anora, and Venom: The Last Dance. Those will be the top 3. So
I mean, our good friend Tim Costa, who used to run First Time Watchers, he did give this 5 stars on Letterboxd.
See, I'm not the only one. I'm not. Look, I understand. Like the way I grade on Letterboxd, it's probably not a 4-star movie. Maybe that's slightly disingenuous. Do I feel like it's a 4-star movie? You bet your ass I do. Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, we talked about that many times. That's what matters, right? Ratings are based on hunches. Like there's no mathematical like correlation to our analysis or anything like that. It's just a reflection of how we feel about the movie, and then the words that we write underneath it is a completely different thing. Yeah.
I mean, I totally get that this film has its faults, as the rest of them do, as we talked about. But I think where it's great, it's really great. It's a ton of fun.
Okay.
It's so dumb with a capital D, but that is, I say that very complimentary.
It is
very,
so
very complimentary. At any rate, let us know if you agree or disagree with what we had to say here. You can leave a comment below if you're watching on YouTube. Hit us up on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can email us incessionfilm@gmail.com or on the aforementioned Letterboxd. You can hit us up there. Let me know what you think of my 4-star rating of The Last Dance.
I think it'd be funny. No one's probably going to even care.
No one's going to care. No, that's the sad reality is no one's going to care. They'll start caring when they see my top 10 list at the end of the year. And again, it's The Brutalist, Anora, Red Rooms, The Last Dance, and then,
something like The Wild Robot or something like that.
The Wild Robot at 5, yeah. Furiosa at 5. I'll put Furiosa at 5. Just below The Last Dance. Okay?
You put it below that, you might have some fighting words with me. Furiosa is probably the best movie of the year. I
know. So everyone be prepared for that. It's going to be a lot of fun. Okay. I think that'll do it for this episode. We have a review of Conclave. It is available right now. We have episode 608. It is available right now as well. We talk about Venom: The Last Dance in terms of its box office. The film, I forget the exact numbers. It was what, 150-ish worldwide?
Something like that. Yeah, something like that.
170, 130. I don't know. I can't remember.
Now you're just spouting off numbers.
I know it was over 100 worldwide. I can't remember if it was like 50 plus 20.
It was between 100 and 200.
Yeah, exactly. Somewhere in that neighborhood.
Yeah,
like it did
give
well.
it a range.
Okay, it did well.
Yeah, it's a range.
At any rate, we talked box office. We talked other movies that we've been catching up with. We had a ton of fun.
Yep.
I hope you enjoyed the episode. Let us know if you want more goofy antics like this one, and we'll make that happen for you.
Yeah.
In all seriousness, this was a lot of fun because oftentimes we come in, or at least I come into these reviews with, notes prepared and wanting to be analytical and thoughtful in my analysis and the way we dissect these movies. And I do enjoy that.
Yeah, listen to this review. For those listening right now, go back and listen to our review of Conclave if you haven't already, and you can see exactly what JD is talking about.
Yeah, like our two conversations polar opposites. Like this was just real fun to come in loose, relaxed, and just having having a ball, having the time of my life.
This is a drinking movie discussion. Like,
I should have came into this hungover. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean Eddie Brock is hungover 9 times out of 10 in this movie.
Yeah,
I mean, in many ways,
he does have a hangover throughout the whole movie.
In many ways, this is a movie about just trying to cure a hangover, is what it feels like.
I know, it's great. Oh, I love it. I love it so much. All right. Well, with all that said, thanks for listening, everybody. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time on the In Session Film Podcast. I do hope Venom comes back. I want him to come back.
Till death do they part.